Hello everyone, Biddle here with a new video. I decided to discuss about the topic of buildable action figures. In 1979, Bandai introduced their Mobile Suit Gundam model kits. These model kits brought about the idea of buildable action figures, as well as started a hobby of Gunpla builders around the world. In 2001, LEGO introduced Bionicle, a series of truly buildable action figures which the user can, take a ball and socket joint and take a bunch of pieces and build their own figures. However, did you know that there were some figures in the early 2000s that, weren't that popular, and they were also very, very obscure? Welcome to the history of buildable action figures, where we discuss about Stikfas, Shockinis, and Modibots. Let's get round to it. So first, let's talk about Stikfas. Stikfas were introduced in 2000 by a company named Mr. Annie J, who is known for other buildable action figures like M-Bears and Q-Boys. I'll discuss about those here in a little bit, as they're all mainly part of their own thing. So let's discuss about Stikfas first. So Stikfas were a series of buildable action figures introduced in 2000. I'm going to go ahead and move the camera here so you can see this. And what they were posable action figures that stuck together using ball joints. Now, what's interesting is that this came right before Bionicle, and when it was first introduced, it kind of had a little bit of a cult following in later years. People bought Stikfas for stop motion animations, and there came a time and it was during a time when YouTube came around and people uploaded stop motion stuff to there. And people mainly use these guys for said stop motions. Stikfas were fantastic stop motion puppets, and they were also fantastic canvases for building your own custom figures. However, let's discuss about their downfalls, mainly to do with the plastic. So Stikfas had a little bit of poor plastic quality, and mainly when it came to the model kits. I have a pre-assembled Stikfa here, which I thought was rare when I got it. I don't know if they're actually rare because I see them all around eBay and Amazon now. But these guys are normally supposed to be built kind of like Gundam. You had to take them out of the sprue and put them together manually. Well, these guys are just come pre-assembled. Now, of course, I'll discuss about Q-Boys and M-Bearers in a second, but those figures were also pre-assembled. So Stikfas was kind of like not the first figures to be pre-assembled. When I start talking about Shockinis, though, I will discuss about them being pre-assembled and being like the first figures before Stikfas to be pre-assembled. But let's discuss about a bunch of other things when it comes to Stikfas. They partnered with Hasbro to bring Stikfas, a series of buildable action figures. I don't know if these figures were made to compete with Bionicle or if they were around mainly for Stikfas to kind of be out there. So that's a little bit of what Stikfas did for Hasbro and various other companies. Fun fact, the very first Stikfas released was actually, the very first Stikfas were distributed by EA, which is very interesting. Who would know that one of the worst companies in the world would distribute these guys? But let's bring out some Q-Boys into the mix. So these were cheaper figures when they were released. They were smaller. They had the same articulation. Whoops, I dropped one. They had the same articulation as Stikfas. And they had the same plastic, unfortunately. So I will discuss about the plastic here in a little bit before it goes straight into Shockinis discussion. So these guys had the same articulation with Stikfas, and these were also series. These were also released in the series. So there was Series 1, which had much more brighter colors. There was Series 2, which had more military style colors, these guys. And also Series 3, which were more stylized to be 1950s robots. Now, of course, like Stikfas, these didn't really go that well. And unfortunately, the company kind of fell out in 2008. So basically, right when people started to review Stikfas on YouTube, the company kind of fell out of balance. So, kind of a sad story for a very interesting action figure line. However, the main problem with Stikfas, I don't know if this was a problem with Zevos back then. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But with Stikfas mainly, it was a problem when it came to the plastic. So there was something really, really bad about Stikfas plastic. Basically, if you play with the toys a lot, they will get very, very loose. This poor cuboid has a loose waist. However, this is the only cuboid I have that actually has a non-broken waist. But I still have another Stikfas figure, which, interestingly enough, didn't break apart through time. However, every single part of it is loose. And there are even some parts that, if I try to put them on, they just come off. That's the issue with Stikfas. They not only break in the joints, but they'll loosen up and they'll come off. However, I doubt that this cuboid will come apart anytime soon, seeing how the joint is built. But if you can see here, look at that joint line there. That small joint line. That's kind of a sign that this plastic wasn't that great for these figures, as posable and articulatable as these figures are. And that it made them kind of, even though they were good stop motion puppets and they were good canvases to be customized on, they weren't that great for like regular play. As you can see, for the pre-built Stikfa here, they're supposed to be aiming towards 8 and up. How are these figures supposed to be for 8 and up? I don't get it. I don't know if these figures can even last like the average play session of an 8-year-old. Like maybe Zevos would, because as far as I know, those were released by Hasbro, and maybe they were built with Hasbro's godly plastic. But in my honest opinion, I recommend not using Stikfas for pretty much anything. What's cool about Stikfas is mainly their design and the aesthetic and so forth. However, I will talk about something similar later on in this video that you can get for about the same price as the rare pre-assembled figures. So I will get into that in a little bit. But if you really want to buy a whole Stikfas army and just use it for a stop motion video, I advise being very, very careful with the joints. I advise not playing with them too much, or they will loosen up and come off or even break. So in fact, I've only really seen them break when it comes to the G2 figures, which are more articulated figures. I'll just go over my history when it comes to Stikfas. So before this guy, I got a G2 lime green alpha male. A lot of the joints broke on that. Then I got a G1 male, which the joints were a lot better with that version. However, Um, However, I got the firefighter set. I don't know where the heck the figure is now, but I still have a bunch of the accessories, and I put them on the G2 figure, or not the G2 figure, the G1 figure, and that instead G1 figure now looks like a walking zombie because every single joint on it is super loose. However, there are still some pieces on there that just stay on to this day, so it kind of varies between figures. If you have a Stikfas figure that has actually stood the test of time, I would like to know that. I want to see these Stikfas go through time and so forth. One day, though, I would like to see this sort of thing reintroduced. Someone buy the patent before it expires in I think 2022. The patent expires in 2022, so I hope someone brings this back, or whoever made Stikfas brings them back. I would actually like to see these re-released with better plastic, because honestly, I'll bring out what I was going to talk later here in a bit. I actually like the design of Stickfas more than these guys, the Modibots. Because honestly, I think they look more human-like, honestly, and that aesthetic is much better than what we see with Modibots. Modibots look more like stop-motion armatures, while these look more like actual cool figures. So, in the next segment, we're going to discuss about Shockinis, which let's discuss about Shockinis before we transition to them. So, in 2004, there was a company named Soccer Toys, which you might have heard for their Scud, the Disposable Assassin, action figures, and so forth. In their later years, they made indie action figures, and then they got in trouble for licensing, which is kind of bad. So, I don't know what the hell happened to the company, but let's go into Shockinis. So Shockinis were kind of like Stikfas, and in fact, they were competitors to Stikfas. I actually have a Shockini figure here, which is very, very nice. These figures are really hard to come by these days. But in 2004, these figures were released, and they were marketed as figures that people can be able to build and customize their own armies and so forth. Well, let's discuss about the history of these guys. So basically, they came about in 2004. They weren't as popular as Stikfas at the time. Especially because Stikfas were the more popular brand of obscure action figures at the time, and these were used in stop motions, but the only stop motions I've seen of these guys, I think I've only seen like a couple of them, and both of them were like licensed by Soccer Toys, so I don't really know there's any sort of stop motions with these guys that you can actually watch that's not a commercial. But here is one in the flesh. Let's discuss about the accessories. So a average Shockini would come with this bamboo stick sort of looking thing. A SMG. I'm just going to let the camera focus so we can see all the detail. What's interesting about Shockinis as well is that some of these accessories have a ball socket in there, so you can be able to attach it to the arm of the figure. And in fact, what's good about the Shockini figures is that they were built with much better plastic. So I actually took this guy apart numerous times, and none of his joints broke. That is amazing. I actually applaud Soccer Toys for that. Another thing is that these figures were built pre-assembled. However, Stikfas later introduced pre-assembled figures, so I'm not exactly sure if that's the main selling point you should have for the sort of figures. Sorry, CEO Soccer Toys. So let's kind of demonstrate the customizability. So these weren't like buildable action figures, but they were more like customizable action figures where you can be able to take apart things and paint them and so forth. Fortunately, I didn't paint mine or customize mine or whatever. I just kept it vanilla because I am very, very interested in it. Let's discuss about the other accessories already. So, um, besides those, we also have a saber. Focus, focus. But yeah, you can kind of see the saber. And then, of course, there's a ball joint in there, but I don't know if that's going to break because of how thin it looks inside there. And we also have this. This is an actual Shockini accessory. I don't know what this is supposed to be used for, but it's just a block of plastic with a hole in it. I don't know if this was to be used for customizability or if you're supposed to like stick this in here and make it like a sign to hit people or something like that, but it's very odd that they would include this. I understand this so you can be able to make it do like kung fu stuff and you can make your own accessories, but why put a small little cereal box in there? And then we also have the base that it comes with, so you can stand this guy up with the small pegs on the bottom. If we kind of zoom into there, I don't know if you would see it. I'll just flip it over. It should say Made in China. Copyright Soccer Toys. Come on. Made in China. Soccer Toys. And on the bottom of this, it also says Soccer Toys Made in China. Now, unfortunately, I do not have the package of this. It's been a long time since I had this. I had it bought from Amazon, and I didn't save the package, sadly. But this is the complete figure. This is all you get with a Shockini figure, and they're much like I'll discuss about Modibots and Stikfas here in a little bit, but Stickfoes, like if you want to get like a plain Stickfoes figure, you have to get it with accessories, which kind of sucked. While with Shockinis, they came with accessories, and they came with quite a few weapons and so forth, and they came with a base and so forth. It was a very interesting line. Unfortunately, and honestly, their plastic was more superior. Soccer Toys did an amazing job with the designing, customizing of the figure, and they were also very, very good for stop motion. Unfortunately, they weren't as popular as Stikfas because they were smaller. They weren't compatible with Lego items, mainly because Stikfas and Cuboids actually have sockets for Lego weapons, as you can see there. So you can actually not only put Stikfas weapons in the hands, but you can also put in Lego guns and blasters and so forth. And you can also build your own, thanks to how much Lego has improved the building system in recent years, which is amazing. However, here's probably one of the main flaws with the Shockini. As you might notice, the handles are super thin. Look at those handles on this gun here. As you can see, look at those weird looking hands right there. It seems like you just put it in and it snaps on. Don't do that. You actually have to put it in very, very gently. This is mainly due to the fact that these are very, very, very thin. Soccer Toys, why did he make these so super thin? It makes no sense to me. why someone would make accessories this thin. With Stikfas, it was the ball joints that broke. With Shockinis, it was the accessories that broke. So, as you can see, if this can focus, there is a small noticeable, as you can see, there's a small noticeable plastic bend there. I almost broke this one time, and I'm actually very, very angry because of it. Soccer Toys, you did an amazing job on the actual figures. Why not, actually make... Why not do the same with the accessories? Why do you have to make the hands look like weird crab hands and so forth? I don't know. These were... honestly, Soccer Toys kind of made the superior figure because it was so much more durable. But Stickfoes were a lot better because they were bigger. They had slightly better articulation, and they honestly were more customizable. They actually had swappable pieces so you can attach armor and so forth. With Shockinis, you can't really attach armor. As you can see on my Stikfas box, you can see that there are some square holes on some of the pieces here, and those are mainly used to attach armor pieces and pockets and so forth to accessorize the figures pretty much. So Shockinis and Stikfas failed for a couple different ways. Either the company kind of went down in shambles, or the company just got shot down for licensing issues. Either or. That's basically it for Stikfas and Shockinis. Now, in much later years, there came the advent of 3D printing. For those who are wondering what 3D printing is a way of printing out molded plastic and basically just printing out whatever the heck you want with plastic, and honestly, with pretty much any material you want. And honestly, 3D printing is one of the biggest things of the 21st century. And fortunately, a guy named Kid McKenna, I think around 2012 or 2013, came out with Modibots. And the person was actually inspired by Zevos, however, they seem to also be a little bit inspired by Stikfas when it comes to design. Every one of these Modibot figures comes with a figure and some extra pieces for if you want to attach other accessories or arms on the figures or whatever. This is huge. Not only can you download the files for this and print it out yourself, but you can also buy a molded version, which is what I did for mine. These figures basically have the same articulation as Stikfas. They are reportedly the same size as Zevos figures. They're compatible with Zevos accessories, which is kind of sad because Stikfas were compatible with Lego size accessories. And, well, honestly, these have much better plastic. If you buy the molded plastic versions, I have never had a loose joint on this figure, nor had a joint popping off. This is honestly the best, buildable action figure sort of thing that I have ever gotten. These kind of satisfied my Stickfoot itch for a while, because honestly, these have the same articulation as Stikfas. Oh, and before I continue on with the articulation bit, I'll have to discuss about the Shockinis. They have ball joints everywhere, and they have basically the same articulation as Stikfas. However, they don't really move their heads up and down a lot. Elbows are, instead of being on a ball joint, they're more of like on a slider joint sort of thing, which is very interesting. And it kind of makes sense because, why would you have the figure break his freaking leg or whatever? But back to Modibots. These figures like Stikfas and Cuboids were able to have many ball joints everywhere, which means that they have about the same articulation. Arms rotate 360 degrees, bend at the elbow, rotate at the elbow, move up and down the hands, rotate on the hands, blah 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 blah. So these basically had the same points of articulation as Stikfas figures. They are like much easier to get, especially since they're more modern. And if you have a 3D printer, you can get them for free, which is pretty darn nice. Well, not necessarily free. You have to buy the printer and then you have to buy the filament. But overall, these are pretty good figures. These combine the hard plastic of Shockinis with the better aesthetic look of Stikfas. Of course, I don't really like the look of the torso parts, mainly because, as you can see, the torso piece here and like the Stikfa honestly looks a lot better aesthetically, because as you can see, the torso looks a lot more human-like. The heads are kind of the same. Like, honestly, I would like a better torso for these guys, and that would basically be it. Hold on, I'm going to grab my charger. But in my honest opinion, if I were to buy one of these guys as stop motion puppets, I would definitely choose Modibots. They have much tougher plastic, much tougher joints, and honestly, they're much better figures overall. Let me just plug this in. But yeah, that's my video on buildable action figures. Let me get all the figures out and put them next to each other. So there was a lot of history going into this thing. And in fact, I ordered the pre-assembled Stickfoes just for the video, kinda. I kinda want to open it up and see if the joints are a lot better, because I'm actually curious on whether or not the pre-assembled Stickfoes figures are much better when it comes to the ball joints. However, if you really want like a stop motion puppet or a action figure you can customize, I would honestly suggest a Cuboid or a Shockini or a Stikfa. Those are better canvases for customization and so forth. One con I forgot to discuss about the Shockini is, like with the pre-assembled Stickfoes and the Stickfoes blister packs, you have to buy accessories for them. But there are no figures that come with accessories. That is because you have to buy accessory packs rather than buy a figure with accessories. Now, you might think that this is a heck of a lot better. Honestly, it's not. These figures cost $12. This guy cost me about $8.99. And honestly, if you really think about it, and here's another thing, those accessory packs, they cost $4. They're actually paying about like $16, $18 for a full Modibot figure, which is very, very, very expensive. Especially since you can buy a full Stickfas kit for only $15 on Amazon. So Modibots are a much more costly endeavor, but they're not that costly if you have a 3D printer. because there are many accessories you can grab for one of these figures that you can just print out with a 3D printer. So overall, we just addressed the history of buildable action figures. Kinda. We mainly just discussed about how they're good stop motion puppets and so forth. But these are all still good buildable action figures, even though this couldn't be considered a buildable action figure. It's kind of an interesting category of these figures. These are more like hobby figures or whatever. But I like to refer to them as buildable action figures because of Stikfas and Modibots mainly being a part of this. So maybe I'll title the video like the history of canvas figures or the history of hobby figures or whatever. But I'll just call it buildable action figures because a lot of these involve taking apart the figure and reattaching the joint or building your own figure from pieces. And when it came to like Gundam and Bionicle, they did it a lot better. Bionicle had much tougher joints, even though some joints did break. Bionicle figures just lasted much longer because of that. And Gundam just is still to this day an amazing hobby, and they're still making figures for the Gundam line. Gundam is the only brand I really discussed about in this video that is still with releasing figures, and there are still upcoming figures this year. So it's a very interesting topic. These figures are pretty rare, except the Modibots. You can get those on Amazon. But a lot of this Stikfas stuff and the Shockinis especially, a lot of this is super rare and you can't really find much anywhere. So overall, if you just want your next stop motion puppet to be a buildable action figure, I highly suggest picking up Modibots. These are pretty darn good stop motion puppets, and these have the same articulation as Stikfas and the others. But if you want a piece of buildable action figures history, buy Cuboids and buy Stikfas. They're like the cheapest way to actually get part of buildable action figures history. You can find them on eBay or Amazon. And if you come across a Shockini, well, I wouldn't mind going about and getting one, especially if they're at a pretty cheap price. I know that there are like 2 listings on eBay of Shockinis, and you can get one for like $15 and you can get one for $160. So Shockinis are pretty darn rare. But as for Stikfas and Modibots, I highly recommend those if you want some buildable hobby, whatever action figures. And that's it for my video. It's a very interesting concept that I haven't really talked to much people about, and honestly, I think it's a pretty good video topic. So that's it. See y'all later. I don't know if I have any other plans for any other videos, but this is actually a pretty long video. When I was looking at the thing for the previous footage, I saw that it was like 28 minutes. So this is actually probably one of the longest videos I've ever made. So fantastic. See y'all. I hope you learned something today.